Bibidong, please draw away the fans of Helena. I was so angry when I saw the tragic ending of my first goddess, but I didn't expect that the deity responded to my wish. Guanling Doluo. I picked up this child, you should worship me. Qiandao Lu. This son has twin martial souls and innate divine aura accompanying him. I have decided. Xiao Xue, he will be your half-brother from now on. God of destruction. Little one, as long as you don't die of anger, just give me the Shura to breathe to death. Cough. Just be careful of the side effects of the martial soul given to you. Keywords of the novel. Doluo. The Oath of the Guarding Angel. No pop-ups, Doluo. The Oath of the Guarding Angel Complete Collection Download, Doluo. The Oath of the Guarding Angel Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Failure in Crossing Robbery. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 1. Failure in Crossing Robbery. Doluo Divine Realm. The sound of golden thunder erupted above the 9 heavens. A golden-haired goddess with 3 pairs of pure white wings behind her held a peerless divine sword, fighting against the endless golden thunder. The 7 round divine rings behind her shone brightly like stars, and the 8th round divine ring flickered and appeared, making her even more sacred and noble. Her eyes were filled with endless determination, and the thunderous force around her body constantly washed away everything. Every step she took in flight seemed to bear endless pressure. Boom boom. Thunder echoed in the sky and earth, and a thunder dragon flew from all directions, eventually being chopped into pieces by the goddess's sword. We're about to succeed. Come on. As she gazed at the last divine thunder gathering above the 9 heavens, the golden-headed goddess silently thought to herself, her palms slowly lifted, and the peerless sword hummed above her head. The thunder grew louder, and the clouds in the sky gradually condensed into solid black clouds. The dazzling light flickered on the clouds, and the whole world seemed to have turned into a thunderous ocean. Undetermined storm. Mutations arise suddenly. 4 golden circles rushed from behind, and the blonde goddess's face suddenly changed. She lightly tapped the void with her toes and instantly avoided them. Bang! 4 golden rings hit the spot where she had just stood, creating a void crack, and the blonde goddess was also hit in the back by the terrifying golden thunder to avoid the attack. Poseidon. The blonde goddess let out a muffled groan, feeling extremely uncomfortable with the divine king-level thunder power. Gold divine blood overflowed from the corner of her mouth, glaring angrily at the deep blue figure holding a trident not far away. The surrounding blue light faded away, and a young-looking man stepped into the void, smiling inwardly as he watched the blonde goddess, with surging water elements circulating around him. Angel, long time no see. I didn't expect it to be me, did I? The angel goddess clenched her divine sword in her hand and pointed directly at Poseidon, coldly saying, Poseidon. How did you get in? Jia. I'm sorry, the one on duty today is Shura. Poseidon chuckled strangely, and a blue and gold light erupted from within, endless waves crashing towards the angel goddess. Blue wave, sea god, endless blue. The angel goddess glanced at her head and gathered at the thunder calamity again. She gritted her teeth and let out a coquettish shout. The 3 pairs of wings were ablaze with flames, and the divine sword shone brightly. Dari, angels, and Wanyang Fun. Puzzy. A blood-red sword blade pierced through the chest from behind, and the condensed golden divine power instantly dissipated. The angel goddess's eyes widened and she turned extremely hard, facing a pair of emotionless blood-red eyes. Are you? Shua. The sword blade retracted from its chest, and the blood-red figure coldly gazed at the angel goddess, muttering word by word, vanish, the law enforcement gods of the divine realm. 3 are enough. Bang, bang, bang. As the waves descended, blocking all actions of the severely injured angel goddess, Poseidon, the sea god, swiftly arrived in front of the angel goddess with a trident in his hand. Angel, don't worry, I will protect the world you are longing for. Don't worry, Poseidon's smile was very lewd, and his originally handsome face was now full of evil. Hee hee. The angel goddess murmured in a low voice, with a strange expression on her face that turned into a self-deprecating smile. She also looked at the thunder about to descend above her head, reaching out to touch the void, her tone almost begging. Poseidon. Winter. I just hope you let go of those innocent lives. Pop. Shura god grabbed the already dyed red wings of the angel goddess and swung her arm vigorously. As she was on the brink of death, she was thrown directly onto the thundercloud. Shaking off the few red feathers casually, Shura-shan said calmly, "If you leave, it will change later." "All right," Poseidon responded excitedly and disappeared into the void with the Shura god in an instant. Boom! The golden thunder descended, and the angelic goddess, bound by layers of water elements, was powerless to resist. Eventually, it completely turned into cosmic dust, except for a golden core that returned to the palace where this goddess lived in the divine realm during her lifetime. The angel goddess fell, perhaps due to the failure of crossing the tribulation, at least many gods would think so. After a moment, the thunderclouds dispersed, and the gods who were observing from thousands of miles away shook their heads in disappointment when they saw that the figure they had hoped for was no longer there. They turned around and left. A dark purple light flashed, and a deity dressed in a purple-red cloak appeared at the place where the last thundercloud fell. After looking around, his eyes sank slightly, and his fists clenched. A few minutes later, the sound of the god's bell, which had been silent for decades, rang, and the 5 flowing lights of black, white, purple, green, and red rushed to the scene. The meeting of the Divine Realm Committee, which had not been held for a long time, suddenly began again. The towering palace sparkles with dazzling golden light under the halo of the Divine Realm. Here, it is the highest point of the entire Divine Realm and also the place that controls everything in the Divine Realm. The Divine Council. The main hall of the palace presents an octagonal shape, and although each wall around it is not decorated, there are countless flickering light curtains. In each light curtain, there is a world of feces on different planets in the human world, a mirror image. This is also where the Divine Council monitors the various planets in this star domain. There is a round table in the center of the main hall, which is made of unknown materials. Upon closer inspection, one can actually see the misty clouds and endless profundity. Shura. Can you explain what exactly happened on the angel's side? On the left side of the round table in the center of the main hall, there was the purple-red deity who had just gone to check. The blood-red eyes under the cloak suddenly became sharp, and the tone gradually became cold, with a hint of doubt in it. Destruction, I'm sorry, the angel's matter was indeed my dereliction of duty. Shura lowered his head with a sincere attitude of admitting his mistake. The god of destruction felt a hint of surprise. How could this guy just admit it? Something's not right, there's definitely 12 points to it. Just as the Shura god was about to say something, another calm voice suddenly sounded. The deity wearing a black robe on the main throne frowned slightly, with a noticeable hint of displeasure in his tone. The pure white Qianying beside him joined in his attack, interweaving black and white light, while resolving the massive Shura killing energy in surging destructive thoughts on both sides. For a long time, the evil god king sighed slightly and said, the angel god is ultimately a half-step god king, who could have become the 6th god king in my divine realm. Shura's negligence led to the angel god being interfered with by some external factors, resulting in the failure of crossing the tribulation, deprivation of law enforcement rights, and self-sealing of the temple for a year. The good and evil gods exchanged a glance and finally issued a verdict, continuing to ask, do you have any objections to this verdict? New book set sale, shared group number with old book. 159020842, the new book has been released, welcome new and old readers to join us, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Tigerhead and Snake Tail. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Tigerhead and Snake Tail, is there any objection to such a judgment? Shura has no objection. Evil. Alright, that's all for the angel's business. The evil king's divine power slightly mobilized and gave the god of destruction a rumor. Do you think I can't guess? I can also prioritize the overall situation. So many gods think it's the angel's own failure, and the gods who support Shura are currently more than half of them in the divine realm, let alone. After all, he is a great hero in the divine realm. The god of destruction spoke out these 10 words on behalf of the evil god, which he had heard for hundreds of thousands of years. Destruction. The goddess of life walked up to the god of destruction, grabbed his arm, shook her head, and vaguely reminded him. Humph. The god of destruction fiercely gouged out the Shura god, and the suspicion in his eyes increased instead of decreasing. He disappeared into the temple with the goddess of life. The kindness of angel gods is well known in the divine realm. At first, when we arrived in the divine realm, the fire god and the light goddess, who were originally one of the 7 elements, were worried that the angel goddess would snatch their jobs. However, as time passed, everyone found that the angel goddess was actually very talkative and smiled at the gods all the time. Even if there is a conflict during the task arrangement of the Divine Realm Committee, the angel god will be willing to take the initiative to back down, and only when the time is ripe will he say, "Can I have this opportunity?" After years of crawling and rolling in the divine realm, with the recognition of the gods and the deepening of faith in the mortal world, the strength of the angel goddess quickly reached half a step divine king. As long as she overcame the divine king level calamity, she was enough to become the 6th divine king and the 4th law enforcement god in the divine realm. It's just a pity self-proclaimed for 1 year. This result shows that the 2 great divine kings, good and evil, do not intend to delve into it. Even if the destructive heart is unwilling to seek acclaim, it can only accept this result of a tiger's head and snake's tail. The door of the Divine Realm Committee opened, and soon the 2 great divine kings walked out with the Shura god, announcing the result to the gods. Under the witness of the gods, the 2 great divine kings temporarily withdrew the emblem of the enforcer of the Shura god and the Shura sword. Those who support the Shura god are grateful, while those who favor the angel goddess are regretful. Only one deity, dressed in a black robe and wearing a half-red mask, stands at the end of the pile of gods, silent and speechless. Glancing around, he noticed that there were no figures of the 2 law enforcement gods who had given birth or died, and he vaguely sensed that something was wrong. "Hey, Brother Death, don't keep your face straight. The angel has failed, and now you have fewer competitors. You should be happy." A 2nd-level god approached the death god and chuckled. Upon hearing this, the Grim Reaper remained expressionless and silently put on his black hood, quickly leaving the outskirts of the Divine Realm Committee. Looking at the figure of Death's departure, another 2nd-level deity pursed its lips and muttered softly, "What kind of aloofness is this guy pretending to be? Alright, you're not going to die anymore." The 2nd-level god who was just laughing at Death just now gave him a glare. He's different from an angel. He's a preparatory law enforcement god personally promoted by Lord Shura. As long as he achieves another great feat, he can directly become a law enforcement god. Don't offend him. Oh, oh. Flying alone to the fall of the angel goddess, Death looked around, searching for something. Suddenly, his eyes froze. Reaching out to touch the void, grabbing fiercely, a semi-transparent blue and gold raindrop quickly floated quietly in the palm of the hand. Poseidon. Death's face was surprised, and he suddenly remembered something, his face becoming gloomy. "Oh, Brother Death," a familiar voice sounded from behind. Death turned his head and saw the Shura god spread out his empty hands and gave him a slight smile. After a moment of silence, the 2 gods looked at each other and the death god spoke up first, "Shura. Lord, are you shielding him?" Upon hearing this, the contemplation in Shura's eyes flickered and he quickly returned to his usual state. He smiled faintly and said, "Well, he gave me an undeniable benefit. I'm curious about what benefits a 1st-level god can bring to you, as the head of law enforcement gods, to move your heart. I won't be able to tell you about this. The Shura god continued to approach him with a smile and poked the blood-red mask that covered half of his face. Brother Death, I'm going to be locked down soon. It was only after pleading with evil that I was allowed to come and talk to you about old times. Death's eyes narrowed slightly and he said, recalling the past. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Do you still understand me, brother? Considering that I have been taking care of you for so many years, can you agree to my big brother's small request? Lord Shura, this is not the principle you taught me as a law enforcer. Death's tone became a bit cold, feeling that he had already lost some understanding of this former teacher. Brother, don't be so rigid. The rules are dead, the gods are alive. You can be my big brother and I beg you. The acting skills were poor, but the fist clenched by Death gradually loosened and eventually turned into a sigh. You tell me. Upon reflection, the position of the God of Death as a preparatory law enforcement officer has indeed been influenced by the light of the Shura god. He has taken good care of him for tens of thousands of years and even referred to him as a brother, teaching him many things that law enforcement officers must possess, such as knowledge and character. This kind of kindness will be unforgettable to the Grim Reaper for a lifetime. And this blood mask, but the Grim Reaper also knew that he would have to repay such kindness sooner or later, it was just that the Shura god had not spoken up. Haha. I just love how refreshing my younger brother is. The Shura god laughed at the words and hooked onto the shoulder of the Death god, leaning in his ear. After my elder brother's confinement period ends, you can help me select a soul in the lower world. The pitch-black castle was shrouded in dark clouds, and occasionally a purple lightning bolt fell from the sky, rendering it a deep purple halo. Any slander coming here will feel a clear sense of oppression. Because this is the territory of the god of destruction, a place where many gods slander and destroy castles. Even the wife of the god of destruction, the goddess of life, would not easily come here because there are massive destructive thoughts everywhere, all of which come from the destructive thoughts of various creatures in the lower world. Only the god of destruction can absorb and transform it into its own power. So, whenever practicing, the god of destruction will be here, and he usually stays with the goddess of life. The black stream of light descended, and Death lifted his hood while taking off half of his blood mask, slowly walking towards the gate of the destroyed castle. The distance is less than 100 meters, but with every step taken, Death feels his heart swaying left and right, and his eyes are also erratic. Upon arriving at the gate, he took a deep breath again and knocked on the castle gate, saying, Lord Doom. Death seeks your advice. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Starting first is strong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Starting first is strong, not seen. A deep voice came from the castle, as if a steel needle had pierced the heart of Death. At this moment, the heart of Death began to beat violently. He gritted his teeth, clenched his fist tightly, and knocked on the door again. Lord Doom, the Grim Reaper seeks your advice. Lord Doom, the Grim Reaper seeks to meet you, daring to speak to you. The third shout was not finished yet, and the door opened without wind. The first thing that caught the eye of Death was a thin and petite deity. His eyes were emitting a faint green light, and his tongue was long enough to lick his forehead. He was standing at the door, making a "please" gesture. The god of labor and gluttony. Death nodded slightly and entered the destroyed castle with him. In the dimly lit hall of the castle, a crimson carpet extends from the entrance all the way to the innermost side. A lightning bolt flashed through the window, instantly adding a touch of light to the hall. You can see that sitting in the main seat inside the hall is the god of destruction. He was closing his eyes slightly, sitting cross-legged in mid-air, refining the destructive intent of his palm, while beside the magnificent purple gold throne, there was a dark golden unknown deity suspended quietly. The god had arrived, and the greedy god bowed deeply to the god of destruction before leaving the main hall. Why don't you ask him if there's anything you don't understand? Why did you come to this place? The god of destruction didn't even lift his eyelids and continued to refine his destructive intent in his palm. The Grim Reaper took a deep breath and slowly spoke, "Destruction, sir. Do you think the divine method has emotions?" Upon hearing this sentence, the speed at which the god of destruction refined his destructive thoughts paused, but he still did not open his eyes. "Didn't he teach you these things, Lord Doom?" Death smiled bitterly. "I feel like I'm doing something that goes against my heart and conscience." "Really? So what did you investigate?" "Poseidon, the sea god." In just 5 words, he successfully made the movement in the hand of the god of destruction pause, and his eyelids twitched slightly. "What else?" "The gratitude has been repaid, and now I want to be an honest future law enforcement officer in the divine realm." Death took a deep breath and looked solemn. "I want to correct Shura." Then, the god of death informed the god of destruction of everything he had encountered during his investigation. In addition, with a flick of his wrist, a feather covered in blood floated in front of the god of destruction, its original whiteness completely dyed red. Boom. The lightning outside the castle suddenly erupted several times, and a strong wind blew. The law enforcement god's eyes suddenly opened, and he stood up from the throne. A huge pressure instantly swept across the entire castle. "Shura. This is what you forced me to do." The voice of the god of destruction suddenly became chilly, with circles of divine light exploding behind it, containing 9 rings and a strong aura of destruction faintly visible. "Okay, I thought it was alone, but I didn't expect this guy to have an accomplice." The dark red gaze cast into the distance, his gaze changing, and he was pondering something. For a long time, the gaze of the god of destruction returned to Death, seemingly examining him. "Death, how do you think we should deal with a deity who knows the law and violates it, but still looks indifferent after being sentenced?" "Heavy punishment." The god of destruction suddenly smiled and withdrew his aura. He picked up the half of his blood mask and played with it, saying, "Since he wants to play, then I'll play with him. Lord Doom, you. There is a saying in the mortal world that goes, 'Treat others with their own way.' The gods in the divine realm are immortal and indifferent to time. Unconsciously, a year is approaching, and there are only the last 6 days left until the end of the confinement period of the Shura god. In the Destruction Castle, the Grim Reaper carefully selects suitable souls from the information in the lower realm. "Shura's confinement period is coming to an end, haven't you found a suitable one yet?" The tone of the god of destruction felt a hint of impatience. "Hey, there are hardly any that meet your requirements." Death is helpless. He takes time every month to destroy the castle and selects suitable soul bodies under the cover of the god of destruction. However, for over 300 years in the lower realm, there has been no one that meets the requirements of the god of destruction. "Hey." At this moment, an extremely young soul body caught the attention of the Grim Reaper, rather than being attracted by the strong obsession on this soul body. "Let me take a look." The divine power of the Grim Reaper gently sensed it, and all the information about the deeply attached soul's life was quickly fed back to the Grim Reaper's mind. TMD. Dog 3, UGZZ. "You're really Babar Cos Jumaji, at first glance, you're not a person. My Schwer, my angel. Why? The heavens should treat her so unfairly, and I can only watch helplessly. I can't do anything. ND, a bunch of NC fans, wait, LZ will be at your doorstep soon." Let's take a look at the next report. It is reported that just last night, a well-known author was attacked, and the attacker's behavior was extremely crazy. Just as the well-known author was about to escape, he threw the weapon in his hand and hit the author's vital point. After unsuccessful rescue efforts, he passed away. After hearing this news after being arrested, the attacker laughed and bit his tongue to commit suicide. His identity is still under further investigation. After quickly browsing through all the recent information about this soul body, Death exclaimed, "Good guy. The scabbard of the sharp blade is only used to protect the person in his heart with his own actions, even though this person does not exist in his reality. But this courage, and persistence make death unable to help but marvel. Destroy adults, just this child. The Grim Reaper plunged this soul into a deep slumber and immediately showed it to the god of destruction. Not bad, just him. The god of destruction looked at him and nodded in satisfaction. A purple light and a golden light condensed from his hands, slowly beginning to merge them. Lord Doom, is it now? Besides, will the angelic power and your destructive power really not conflict? Death was slightly surprised. It's better to start first. Speaking, the two divine powers completed their union, and with a gentle touch from the god of destruction, they slowly merged into the soul. Blood and flesh began to grow, and in a moment, they became a newborn baby. After a slight perception, a hint of embarrassment flashed on the face of the god of destruction. This fusion did have some side effects, but it shouldn't be a big problem for this child. What exactly is it? Death asked. This. I'm not sure, it should be related to the person in his obsession. Alright, let's send him down to the lower world. Death had no choice but to follow suit. As he watched the baby gradually disappear from the vortex of space, the god of destruction murmured, "Little one, don't let me down. As long as I don't die of anger, the Shura will give me a life of anger." Cough. Just be careful of the side effects of giving you those two martial souls. Has disappeared reasonably in chapter 68, here we go. Our protagonist has successfully landed. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Cold Light Valley, Yushi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Cold Light Valley, Yushi Dolua Plain, the northeast region of the Tiendo Empire. A valley is covered in ice and snow that never melts for years, cold and bone-piercing. The vast snowfield is embedded with fragments of sunlight, but in this cold environment, various strange plants grow, and even enter it. Even without the bright sunshine, even ordinary people cannot feel any sense of coldness. In the withered black coniferous forest, a winding path can be faintly seen, buried under thick snow, and it looks like no one has stepped on it for many years. Under the sunshine, a plaque slowly melted the snow and ice, revealing 3 large characters carved with sharp tools. Cold Light Valley. According to legend, this was once the place where the angel goddess descended. She forged a peerless divine bow from the extremely cold mysterious ice stone bathed in the angel holy light in the Cold Light Valley. The divine bow then received God's blessing and became the martial soul of soul masters. However, the inheritance of the divine bow is very difficult, and it is highly likely that it will undergo reverse mutation and degenerate into an ordinary weapon soul. But it has been over 300 years and there has been no more appearance of the divine bow martial soul at the deepest part of the valley. A slightly slender figure sat cross-legged between 2 peaks, with a pair of ice wings as thin as cicada wings behind it. A huge and gorgeous ice crystal long bow suspended in front of him, and strands of golden light emitted from the bow strings, jumping on the ice crystals. The 9 soul rings move up and down, with double yellow, double purple, and 5 black, showcasing his strength as a Dolua. The titled Dolua was dressed in snow clothes and looked quite young. The cold light on his left eye flickered slightly, and the snow howled in his ear. The strong gust of wind made his cheeks ache. The snowflakes on his head had stopped at some point, leaving only a few strands of hair floating in the air and his cloak swaying in the wind and snow. Buzz! Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows, grabbed the bowstring in his right hand, and shouted loudly. In an instant, the sky and earth changed color, and an ultimate golden light burst out from within him like a sharp sword, piercing the gray sky and shining on this titled Dolua. His soul power instantly filled his whole body. Boom! The golden light was scorching hot, melting the ice and snow on his body, revealing a gold medal in his waist. The light feather. Level 97 Peak Dolua. I succeeded. Guangling Dolua opened his eyes, with a smile on his lips, feeling the power of a higher realm, revealing a strong sense of joy in his eyes. Hee hee. Suddenly, he showed a mischievous smile and turned to look in the direction of the city in the center of the mainland. Qingluan, to celebrate my achievement in the pinnacle of Dolua, could you please hold a celebration banquet for me? Wow! The ice wings spread out, and the light feather Dolua was about to leave when he caught a glimpse of a white unidentified object rising up on the nearby snowfield, emitting a weak aura of life. That's... The ice crystal in his left eye condensed a bit, and Guanling Dolua gazed at it, but was stunned for a moment. A baby. Quickly approaching, Guanling Dolua reached out and picked up the little baby. Looking down, the baby lying in a pure white swaddle had a pale face like paper, weak breathing, and seemed to be on the brink of death. With a touch of his hand, Guanling Dolua took out a white paper from his swaddle, on which two simple words were written in black. Yushi. Are you called Yushi? Who's the unlucky child from? Despite his disdain, Guanling Dolua still released a trace of soul power to protect the baby's body, preventing the cold wind from further tormenting him. As soon as his soul power was released, Guanling Dolua exclaimed in surprise. Perhaps just now, while maintaining the fragile life of this baby, a faint golden halo emerged enveloping its surface, seemingly restoring its weak vitality. Divine aura. This little guy is actually born with a divine aura accompanying him. Guanling Dolua was filled with excitement and joy for a moment, and this aura was only sensed by 3 people. Is this little guy thinking of this? Guanling Dolua's face couldn't help but become a bit strange. Under the Pope's crown. You shouldn't really be a scumbag, right? Yeah. The little baby woke up. Okay, it's so cold. Didn't I commit suicide? Where is this? Guanling Dolua didn't know that this little baby was not an ordinary child. Didn't I die? But why can't I move? The baby began to cry, waving and struggling with its small arms and legs, trying to break free from its constraints. Guanling Dolua's face stiffened and he quickly comforted, don't be afraid, little one, be good and obedient. But this situation didn't last too long. Soon, the little one gradually calmed down and seemed to have gotten used to being bound. With a tilt of his head, he fell into a deep sleep. It seems like someone hugged me. Is it true that after death, I will be reborn? But why is my memory? Anyway, I can't do anything now. Let's take a break first. The little one stopped crying, and Guanling Dolua breathed a sigh of relief before having time to take a look at the little doll. It's a boy. How could this child be in the cold light valley? How could I not have noticed it when I came just now? Hey, don't say it, it's quite cute, and this sacred aura. Can't you really believe it's the Pope's mistake again? Forget it, let's take it back first. After all, your divine aura should be more interesting to the father and son. Make up your mind. Guanling Dolua uses soul power to protect this little guy, and the ice crystal wings unfold, flying away at lightning speed. Returning from the northeast of the Tiendo Empire to the martial Soul City does not require much time for peak Dolua like Guanling Dolua, but due to having to take care of this little one, it has to be extended to about 5 days. The little one has also woken up on the road, always staring straight at Guanling Dolua with wide eyes. The old mischievous boy is not averse, and even teased him a few times with his hands. Little guy, what are you looking at? Haven't you seen an old handsome guy before? The little doll spends half of her time sleeping, either staring at Guanling Dolua or wanting to turn around and look at the outside world when she wakes up. Why is he a bit familiar? Puhaha, handsome guy. He's quite narcissistic. Where is this and why does he fly? Have I traveled or am I dreaming? However, at least I am still alive, even though I have become a child. In a restaurant, Guanling Dolua took out a hot water bottle he carried with him and accurately controlled the cold to make it neither too cold nor too hot. He then handed it to the little guy's mouth and said, "Ah." The little one was very cooperative, opened his mouth, and drank the warm water. The little doll is quite obedient. Guanling Doluo smiled slightly and scooped up a small spoon. As soon as he reached his mouth, Guanling Doluo withdrew his spoon and the little one immediately froze, staring at him with big and small eyes. Woo-woo. As the little one was about to cry, Guanling Doluo chuckled and took out a bottle filled with top-quality milk from her arms. She handed it to him and asked with a smile, "Do you want to drink it?" The little one looked at the milky white liquid, his eyes lit up, and without hesitation, he took the bottle. "TSK, you little doll, why are you so smart? You thought you had to coax and deceive for a while." Gently shaking his head, Guanling Doluo continued to eat the steamed buns in his hand and looked at the tall and bustling city 100 meters away. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Martial Soul Hall, The Papal Family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Martial Soul Hall, The Papal Family. Hey, little one, wake up and take a look at your new home in the future. The gate of the Martial Soul City arrived, and Guanling Doluo nodded at Xia Yuxi's forehead. The little one looked up in confusion, as if he had just woken up. Martial Soul City. The city gate is carved in pure gold and inscribed with 3 golden characters. Martial Soul City. Xia Yuxi suddenly widened her eyes and reached out her meaty hand, looking both amused and somewhat bewildered. She looked extremely cute in Guanling Doluo. Seeing the little one's reaction like this, Guanling Doluo thought it was because the little one was at a loss and reached out to tease him again. "Little one, let's go. Let's go see Emperor Crown with me. Father and son should be more interested in you. I'll take you inside and take a look." The Pope. Father and son. Capturing the key information in Guanling Doluo's words again, Xia Yuxi stabilized her mind and quickly hid her head in her swaddling clothes to prevent Guanling Doluo from seeing his expression. "I have really come." In the darkness, Xia Yuxi brainstormed and kept thinking about whether she had traveled through time. If this is true, is there really a God responding to me? Xia Yuxi's heart beat even harder. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly poked out a small head from his swaddling clothes and continued to look at the life-saving benefactor who brought him back from the snowy plain. For Xiao Yuxi's gaze, Guanling Doluo has seen nothing strange in the past 5 days. It can only be seen that a newborn child is curious and has never seen anything. White hair. Blue eyes, wings. Big bow. Is he the most popular handsome guy in the legendary palace, with crane hair, child's face, light feathers, and Doluo? Xia Yuxi is 80% certain of the identity of this seemingly young but actually middle-aged old man. The remaining 20% are things called soul rings that have not yet been revealed on him. If this is true. Xia Yuxi's eyes suddenly lit up. Guanling Doluo seemed to also feel something. Looking at the smile that instantly bloomed on the little guy's face, for some reason, he felt a bit warm and comfortable. "Hey little ghost, you've been watching for 5 days and haven't seen enough yet." Guanling Doluo smiled helplessly and nodded his forehead. "If it weren't for your innate divine aura, I would have thrown you to the orphanage specially established by the Martial Soul Hall." "Ha! If you have soul power, it's okay to say. If you awaken a useless martial soul, TSK. Your fate may only become a warrior." As he muttered to himself, Guanling Doluo had already arrived at the door of the Pope's palace holding Xia Yuxi. The guard at the door saw the gold medal on his waist and immediately knelt down respectfully. "See offering to the Lord." "Oh, come on, should the Pope be holding the court meeting as usual at this time?" Guanling Doluo waved his hand and asked. "Lord Hui, yes." Guanling Doluo nodded lightly and strode into the papal palace, holding the little one in his arms. The guards were all surprised when they saw him holding a baby. At this moment, the person had already entered the door, and after standing up again, they still kept whispering to each other. Zayayuxi lay on the chest of Guangling Doluo, following his gaze. In the magnificent hall, more than 10 people dressed in red were kneeling on the ground, respectfully worshipping the man on the gilded throne. The man above the throne, with golden hair and golden pupils, looks over 30 years old and slightly handsome. He wears a golden crown and a golden robe, sitting there with extraordinary authority. Chamber of Secrets Doluo. Zayayuxi blurted out, but her vocal cords and teeth were not yet fully developed, and she could only hear 4 babbling sounds. As soon as the door of the main hall opened, Qiang Sunji turned his gaze and saw that it was Guangling Doluo. He had intended to get up first to welcome him, but he noticed a little doll in the latter's arms and waved his hand. "Let's all go down, the court meeting is over." "Yes, under the crown of the Pope." More than 10 people in red stood up and left the main hall one after another, until the door closed. Chihiro-ji then stood up and walked off the throne with a smile on his face. "Uncle Wu, you're back from your old age." Guangling Doluo nodded and carried Zayayuxi to Qiang Sunji, casually asking, "Pope, where are Xiaoju and Xiaogui?" "I sent them to carry out the mission, and they should be back soon." Qian Xuanji explained, then his gaze paused on Guangling Doluo, slightly contracting, and then he burst into laughter. "Congratulations to Uncle Wu for breaking through to the peak of level 97. Hehe, who is that?" Qian Xuanji once again complimented this elder who had worked with his own father for decades. Although he was already crowned by the Pope, he still respected him with great respect and treated him with younger courtesy, without any neglect due to his noble status. "Uncle Wu, you haven't asked yet. Who is this child?" Qian Xuanji pointed and stared at his little Yushi with wide eyes. Guangling Doluo smiled slightly and said, "Try using your soul power to explore." Qiang Sunji followed suit, and a golden halo spread from his hand, scanning Zayayuxi's body. After a moment, his face also showed a surprised and strange expression. Is this not right? "Hello, Pope, is it true that you have difficulty?" "Uncle Wu, I can't talk nonsense about it. Apart from Xiao Xue, I don't have a second son, and even Dong." It seemed that he had mentioned something that was very troublesome for Qinshuan. He sighed and said, "Forget it, let's not talk about that idiot. Why don't we take this child to my father to see?" "Okay." Guangling Doluo shrugged and asked again, "How's that girl doing?" "Harm, I went to the capital of slaughter a year ago and haven't returned yet. I don't know if Xiao Xue." "Forget it, let's go and find her father." Zayayuxi listened to their conversation without saying a word, feeling even more excited, to the point where the corners of her mouth inexplicably hooked. However, the 2 strong men only saw the childish smile as a child. It's really Doluo Star, the capital of slaughter. And Xiao Xue. Zayayuxi's mood became even more excited, and her eyes suddenly turned a little red. "Pop it." Guangling Doluo thought he was going to cry again, so he took out another bottle of milk and directly blocked Zayayuxi's mouth. The 2 of them left the main hall with Zayayuxi, used their soul power to fly, and arrived at another solemn golden palace in 2.5 minutes. Qiang Sunji gently pushed the door in. "Grandpa," before they could see anyone, the 3 of them first heard a string of silver bell-like laughter, and then saw an extremely invincible giant cute golden-haired little bun running up to a blonde old man, holding his knee and acting cute. "Grandpa, I want to hear another story." The blonde old man crouched down and kindly touched little Loli's head, doting on her and saying, "All right, Xiao Xue, Grandpa will tell you another story before the establishment of our martial soul hall." "She is." Zayayuxi's mouth, which was sucking milk, immediately stopped and stared blankly at the grandfather and grandson, her eyes turning slightly red again. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Little Angels. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Little Angels. Grandpa, I need to listen again. Haha. I've heard it all 3 times, can you memorize it yourself, Xiao Xue? I just like my grandfather telling me that I also want to be as powerful as my ancestors. Okay, Grandpa, let me tell you. Qian Daolu patiently told the story to the blonde little loli, and the smile on her face never stopped. Qian Xuanji and Guanling Doyuo were very clever and didn't bother first, so they stood quietly at the door waiting. Watching this warm scene, Xia Yuxi also struggled to hold back her tears, revealing a cute smile on her face. Until the blonde little loli finished listening to the story of the angel god for the fourth time, Guanling Dolua and Qiang Sunji took a step forward and said, "Father, boss, Xiaoxue." Golden-haired little loli heard his call and immediately her eyes lit up again. When she turned her head, she saw her father and Grandpa Guanling standing at the door. Little Rose Shou opened her hand and flew over again. "Dad, Grandpa Guanling." Taking the soft golden-haired little ball, Qiang Sunji's smile deepened and he said, "Good little Snow, have you been naughty with your grandfather?" Zhao Qianren Shui blinked her watery eyes and pouted at Qianshu and Ji. "Grandpa really likes Shui. Dad can't speak recklessly." Okay, come on, say hello to Grandpa Guanling." Qian Xuanji picked up the extremely invincible giant TM cute little Qian Renshue and let her sit well on his shoulder. He. "Hello Uncle Guanling." Xiao Qianren Shui raised her pink face and gave a sweet smile to Guanling Dolua, shouting in a milky voice. "Oh my, little miss has such a sweet mouth. Pope, you have to learn how to hold on, I'm not old yet." Guanling Dolua laughed and almost forgot about Xiao Yuxi in his hand, responding happily to Zhao Oqian Rengsu. Qianshuan Ji smiled awkwardly upon hearing this. "Why does this little cotton jacket feel a bit leaky?" Woo. They were happy, and Xia Yuxi almost got carsick in the arms of Guanling Dolua, who was laughing heartily. She couldn't hold on to any of the milk in her hand and fell out, reaching out to pick it up. Ah! Zhao Qianren Shui reached out her hand and struggled to catch it. She looked up and met Xia Yuxi's 4 eyes. "Nah, here you are." Zhao Qianren Shui gently handed it to Xia Yuxi, and 2 pairs of flesh hands touched each other. The genuine touch, Xia Yuxi now completely believed it, trembling as she held the milky white milk cup and withdrew into Guanling Doyuo's arms. As she sucked on it, her eyes sparkled with crystal-clear tears, but she cried with a smile. It was precisely this first interaction between these 2 adorable little ones that caught the attention of the nearby Qiandao Lu and stepped out in front of the 4 of them. "Sun Ji, Lao Wu, this little doll is." "Ah, father, this is Uncle Wu in the cold light valley." Qian Xuanji simply recounted what Guanling Dolua had told him to Qian Daolu. After listening to this, Qian Daolu looked at Xiao Yuxi with a hint of exploration in his eyes and said, "Is innate divine aura accompanied?" "It seems only when Xiao Shui was born." During his contemplation, he looked at the sun again, his gaze divided into 3 parts majestic, 3 parts skeptical, and 4 parts inquisitive. Hey. Father, Bibi Dong has been away for a year and his life and death are still uncertain. I think you and I do have some. But we shouldn't end up in chaos, right?" Qian Daolu sighed lightly upon hearing the words and said, "Seeking illness, being a father is not to blame you, it's just that girl. You shouldn't use that kind of means." "Father, I admit I was a bit headstrong at the time. Didn't you also chase me with the sky measuring sword to chop, and even circled around the worship hall hundreds of times back then? But after all, your behavior goes against the integrity of my angel family." Qian Daoliu's face became somewhat rigid. Qiang Sunji respected and felt somewhat helpless towards his own rigid Buddhist-style Laozi, saying, "Father, you wouldn't want to drive away your own son just because of her, would you? Don't forget, what kind of blasphemous words she said at that time." "Oh, you." Qian Daolu shook his head helplessly. "Alright, let's not mention this matter for now. Bibi Dong went to such a dangerous place alone, I'm afraid. I think it's best to let her die inside." Xia Yuxi shouted wildly in her heart. When it comes to Bibi Dong, he gets angry. Tell me about your title Doluo. A handsome and beautiful man doesn't like him, but instead looks at a no treasures, a big corpse, a small anus with no strength, appearance, or intelligence. Although human XP is free, is this a bit outrageous? What else are you saying? Even if you want to leave the Martial Soul Hall, you have to be with that FW. Chamber of Secrets Doluo, let me tell you, at that time, even if you were using soul release technique, I didn't even have a word to refute it. What kind of thing? The awakening of the martial soul, food and shelter, and cultivation resources are all using the martial soul palace, and the result is repaid with these 5 words. A neighbor who bullies his master and destroys his ancestors has to take a single 6, mainly because of the reason for betrayal, and the benefits he receives are too much. Xia Yuxi only felt that she was holding back for the martial soul hall. With such a big-chested and brainless saint on her shoulders, if she really wanted to curse, she couldn't curse now. The only contribution of that woman is probably giving birth to such a little angel. Looking up again, Xia Yuxi looked at Xiao Qianrengsu sitting on Qiang Sunji's shoulder playing with her father's hair, covering her head with a bottle and closing her eyes slightly. Although I don't know why a miracle happened, since I'm here, I will definitely cherish this miracle. Bang 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 bang. A slightly urgent knocking sound came from the door, and a rough voice came in from outside. Under the crown of the Pope, the Holy Virgin has returned. Mom. Xiao Qianren Shui smiled happily and immediately slid down her father's shoulder, running back to a house, leaving only one sentence. Dad and Grandpa, let Mom wait for a moment, just a little while. For his daughters, granddaughters, reaction, the father and son of the Qianjia family shook their heads helplessly and gave a glance to the nearby Guanling Doluo. Uncle Wu, old 5, she probably doesn't want to see us. It's up to you. Guanling Doluo's mouth twitched as he handed Xia Yuxi over to Qiandaoliu. He immediately muttered to himself, you're so blatant about using me as a gunner. Quickly, Xiao Qianren Shui ran out with a large bag of snacks and an abstract drawing paper, his face covered in a bright smile. Dad, Grandpa, where is Mom? Qiang Sunji smiled awkwardly and said somewhat unnaturally, let Grandpa Guangling take you there. Your mother just came back. Grandpa Guangling, I want to see Mom. Why don't you take Shui with you? Little Qianren Shui ran to Guanling Doluo, blinking her cute blue eyes, filled with hope and anticipation. Guanling Doluo sighed to himself, still doting on the little one's head, picked her up, and sat on his shoulder. Then let's go with Guanling Grandpa. Great, let's go see Mom. Xiao Qianrengshu had a joyful expression on her face, smiling sweetly and contentedly, while fantasizing about beauty and carefully checking her snacks and drawing paper. It seems like all the things in the martial soul city that can be bought with less than a gold soul coin are like precious treasures. Don't go. Xia Yuxi struggled on the hands of Qiandao Lu, making inexplicable babbling sounds in her mouth, and the milk in the bottle shook out a bit. This little guy seeing him like this, Qiandaoliu couldn't help but nod with his hand. A soft golden light quietly spread from his fingertips to Xia Yuxi's body and began to explore. Soon, his reaction was almost the same as Qiang Sunji's. However, the suspicion in Haoda's eyes dissipated completely. Indeed, there is no sense of my angelic bloodline. But this sacred aura is indeed true. Little one, what exactly is your background? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Tiger poison does not eat seeds. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Tiger poison does not eat seeds. In the Holy Maiden's Hall, there were some blood stains left on the floor, and all the way to the bathroom, a cold and stunning girl stood in front of the mirror, with cold water droplets slowly dripping down her neck, washing the blood stains on her cheeks. Her figure is curvy and graceful, with light purple long hair draped over her shoulders. She is dressed in a white dress that outlines a beautiful curve and allure, but there is a hint of fierceness between her eyebrows. On her forehead, a black sickle-shaped mark is faintly visible. The first exam of the Rakshasa, devouring the soul of an angel martial soul master, he. Qianshuan disease, enjoy the last few years of your life. Bibidong's eyes blinked slightly, and the purple-red color filled her pupils. She gently stroked her forehead, and a bloodthirsty light flashed through. Since the Chamber of Secrets incident 3 years ago, there have been only 2 things left in her heart: finding the corpse and a wild ambition for revenge. A faint purple aura rushed into Bibidong's mind, and he turned his head as if looking towards the direction of the worship hall through the heavy doors, his face gradually turning grim. Dong dong dong. Holy! Your Highness, there is a worshipper, please. Outside the door, the trembling voice of the maid sounded, and upon hearing this sound, Bibidong's face instantly became even more gloomy. As she gritted her teeth, a deep hatred appeared in her eyes. She asked in a deep voice, "What does that deity look like?" Wearing snow clothes, with crane hair and a childlike appearance. Guanling Doluo. Bibidong's face softened slightly, and his momentum had already converged on the edge of the explosion. "Let him in," he said. "In the temple of worship, the person Bibidong is most familiar with is not Qian Daolu or Jean Crocodile, but this 5 worshippers. Before that incident happened, this old mischievous child often ran out of the temple of worship to play with her. Bibidong even asked confidently back then, 'Why do you, this old mischievous child, come and catch her if you don't practice well?' But Wu Zun, who was very easy-going, said that the old man's talent had almost reached its end. Instead of sitting foolishly in a small black room daydreaming about martial souls every day, it would be better to play with you young people well, so as not to leave any regrets when you grow old in the future." Crunching, the door opened, and Guanling Doluo smiled with his hands behind him, nodding in greeting. "Xiaodonger, I didn't expect you to come back alive. You're quite impressive." Bibidong closed his eyes slightly and snorted calmly, "Isn't it that the 5 sacrifices were very disappointed?" The smile on Guanling Doluo's face stiffened slightly, and he coughed dryly, saying, "How could that be? You are a child that I have watched grow up with. That lovely little girl back then, how could I bear to curse you to death? Oh, those 5 worshippers are here to congratulate me on leaving the capital of slaughter this time." Bibidong hugged his hands and raised his eyes slightly. Guanling Doluo chuckled and said, "Well, of course there are others who are welcoming you back. Others don't need it, especially those 2 guys." Bibidong's tone was a bit cold. If it weren't for the good personal relationship with him, he would have seen off the guests long ago. "That's not true, it's just Xiaodonger. Can you stop being stern? I don't owe you any soul coins, do I?" Guanling Doluo maintained a smile and moved his hand slightly behind his back. Bibidong furrowed her brows, and with a slight release of her mental energy, she immediately sensed the sacred aura inside the room that made her extremely disgusted. Her blood-red eyes flickered slightly, and a chill began to spread from around her. "You brought her here. Xiaodonger, calm down." With a slight sigh, Guanling Doluo took out both hands. Xiaoqian Rengsu grabbed the colorful candy in her left hand and a piece of drawing paper in her right hand, showing a sweet smile at Bibidong. "Mom, welcome home. This is Shuer's favorite candy for you to eat." As Xiaoqian Rengsu spoke, she handed out the candy in her left hand, eagerly waiting for her mother's smile, even if it was just a hint. Bibidong squinted his eyes and stared at the candy in Xiaoqian Rengshu's palm, but for a moment he didn't pick it up. "Mom." Xiaoqian Rengsu tilted her head to look at her, thinking that her mother didn't think it was enough. So she quickly took out another handful and handed over the drawing paper in her right hand. The 4 characters on it could barely be seen as Qiandaoliu's father and son, Bibidong and Xiaoqian Rengsu. Bibidong glanced and his canthus was about to crack. In the painting, Qian Xuanji and her hold hands, while Shao Qianrengshu sits on his father's shoulder, pulling the hair hanging from his mother's ear. Qian Daolu stands beside Qian Xuanji, with one hand resting on his son's shoulder. Empty and empty the realm of killing gods slowly unfolded, and the 8 soul rings on Bibi Dong's body suddenly rose from his feet. His gaze towards Shao Qianren Shui unexpectedly appeared. Killing intent. Bang! Soul power erupted, and the waves swept through. Fortunately, the light feather Dolua had quick eyes and hands, and the momentum also erupted. He pulled back little Qianren Snow to protect him, and the ice crystal wings spread out. After reaching the peak of level 97, he was able to predict general dangers, but this time the danger still surprised Guanling Dolua. Bibi Dong surprisingly broke through to level 84 Soul Dolua in just 1 year in the capital of slaughter. Isn't she at the peak of the Soul Saint when she left? Hey, Shao Donger, isn't it? This time, Guanling Dolua couldn't calm down. Guanling's long bow was held in the other hand, and the ice crystal had already begun to condense its arrows. Mom! I'm not your mother. Bibi Dong roared hysterically as candy and paper, which had just been shaken by the soul power of both sides, floated down in front of her. Sting! 10 fingers exerted a slight force, and the spot where the painting paper shattered happened to be the hand held by Bibi Dong and Qian Xuanji. The painting paper that Zhao Qianren Shui regarded as a treasure turned into debris in an instant. Bang! With a sharp stomp of Henshin's foot, purple and black gas spread, and those candies instantly turned into ashes. The expectation in Shao Qianrengshu's eyes instantly transformed into disappointment, fear, and tears rolling down her cheeks. Bibi Dong's eyes turned red and her heart twitched fiercely. She knew the significance of this painting to Shao Qianren Shui, but she wanted to destroy it without hesitation. Mom! Shao Qianren Shui choked. Why? Get out! Guanling Dolua, take her out, don't force me to use soul skills. Bibi Dong roared with fierce eyes and a fierce murderous aura emanating from her whole body. Her emotions had been completely backfired by the murderous aura. Bibi Dong. Tiger poison still doesn't eat its seeds, how can you burst out of killing energy? Guanling Dolua's face also completely cooled down, and the 5th soul ring flashed slightly. Bibi Dong was like a madman, his arms had transformed into sharp dark purple spider legs, and venom was dripping down the tip. Ha ha ha. Tiger poison doesn't eat children. It's ridiculous. I don't admit to having this evil seed, why can't I eat it? A faint pain flashed in Guanling Dolua's eyes, and after all, he withdrew his Guanling long bow and slowly retreated, holding on to Zhao Qianren Shui, who was already scared and about to cry. Finally, he flew out of the Holy Maiden Hall. Along the way, Zhao Qianren Shui in her arms kept crying, her cries becoming louder and more mournful. The most frequently heard word by Guanling Dolua is, Mom, please, don't. Indeed, it failed again. From a distance, Qian Dao Lu heard his granddaughters crying, feeling as heartbroken as a knife. With a wave of his hand, he opened the gate of the temple and teleported to Guanling Dolua, where he received Zhao Qianren Shui. I didn't blame Guanling Dolua for a word, but I asked him to rest and comfort his granddaughter for a while. Be good, don't cry, Grandpa is here. Qian Xuanji also walked forward and gave a bitter smile, saying, Forget it, father, my disciple. I'll think of another way. He glanced at Zhao Qianrengshu, who was crying her heart out in Qian Dao Lu's arms, his eyes darkened, and he felt guilty in his heart. I'm sorry, daughter. If it weren't for Dad, you wouldn't have suffered so much at such a young age. Our little Yushi was placed on a wooden chair, and when the door was pushed open, she looked over. Zhao Qianren Shui pounced on Qian Daoliu's arms and cried, while Qiang Sunji standing beside her had a sad face. No need to think, it's 100% because that woman Bibi Dong has gone crazy again. Bastard. Bastard. I can only do what I want to watch when I travel through time. I can't do anything. The little angel cried uncontrollably, tightly covering her mouth with her small hands. Her eyes were red and swollen, and every sob made little Yushi feel even more heartbroken. I can tolerate it. I can tolerate it. When I turn 6, even if I am a disabled martial soul, I have to do what I can with the script in my mind. Xiao Qianrengshu's emotions gradually stabilized, as if she had a feeling and glanced towards Xiao Yushi's direction. Two golden sacred auras collided, and a soft halo spread. The angel statue enshrined in the deepest part of the temple trembled slightly. I'm not joking, it's really red-eyed. After finishing these 2 chapters, the most painful thing is really to cut myself. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Awakening, Twins. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 8 Awakening, Twins 6 years later. On the mountainside of the Six Wings Mountain in the Papal Palace, a little boy with silver hair and red pupils was lying face up in the sun, his eyes slightly closed, and a faint golden light flowed on his exposed skin. It's so warm. The little boy stretched lazily and slowly got up, rubbed his eyes, and took a deep breath. Brother Yushi, come down quickly. A crisp and pleasant childlike voice shattered the tranquility. A small golden meteor flew from the foot of the mountain, and the 2 yellow and 1 purple soul rings converged. The little girl with golden hair and blue pupils crossed her waist and looked down at the little boy with silver hair and red pupils. Zayayuxi spoke first, with a smile on her face and a slightly weak tone. I understand, Sister Shui. As he spoke, he opened his short arms to signal Snow Sister, staring straight at her pair of pure white wings. Qianren Shui smiled at the indulgence of this pet, picked up Zayayuxi and gently placed her on her back. Her wings trembled slightly and she dived down the mountainside. Zayayuxi, today is your martial soul awakening day. How could you not take such an important day seriously? Qianrengshu's tone was somewhat serious, and she patted Zayayuxi on the back. Zayayuxi smiled and coquettishly said, because I knew my sister would come to pick me up. You. Qianrenshu said helplessly, but without much blame. The little guy on her back, I don't know how much light and vitality it brought to her childhood. My father is busy with official duties as the Pope, and my grandfather doesn't see me every day. My mother every time she sees herself feeling lonely, Zayayuxi always rushes over, calling out one sister after another, and even plays with her, learning to tell stories like a little adult. The days with his company are always warm, woo-woo. A wave of softness came from her neck, and Zayayuxi buried her head and affectionately rubbed against Angel Sister. The sound of steady breathing blew in her ears, and Qianren Shui's heart warmed up as she reached out to touch the little one's head. Zayayuxi, don't worry, even if you awaken a useless martial soul and roll on the ground, you still demand that Grandpa keep you to accompany me. We are not siblings, but more like siblings. You have been my only playmate for 6 years. Qianren Shui silently recited in her heart, her eyes flashing with determination. In a backyard of the temple, Qian Daolu and Guangling Doluo have already waited here. Grandpa, I brought Yushi here. Great offering to Grandpa. Qian Daolu let out a nonchalant and then his gaze remained on Xiao Yushi. He has his own ideas and is not prepared to expose this child to the world's eyes. According to speculation back then, Zayayuxi's martial soul must be a divine attribute of the light-type martial soul, and it is definitely not simple. Hey, Dad hasn't come back yet. Looking around, Qianren Shui felt a bit disappointed. His father, Qian Shubing, has been out for a month and hasn't come back yet. Guangling Doluo smiled gently and said, hee hee. Young master, don't worry. The Pope has gone to find a treasure that can ease your family relationship and will be back soon. Treasure. The little angel tilted her head and didn't understand what Grandpa Guangling was selling. Is it the blue silver emperor? Now that Qianren Shui is 9 years old, the only thing on the timeline is this. Xia Yuxi guessed in her heart and made up her mind that when the Iron Pope returned, she must remind him and the two people around her to always keep a distance from that crazy woman. The awakening of the martial soul begins. Xian Daolu gestured for Xiao Yushi to stand in the center of a magic formation, then casually waved it. 6 awakening stones surrounded him, forming a 6-pointed star, and the latter's body slowly floated in the air. The martial soul inside gradually began to awaken. Floating in the center of the awakening formation, Xia Yuxi's eyes suddenly shook, and it seemed that some shackles had broken through her body. Unconsciously, she spread her left palm towards the sky, and a strong aura of light burst out. The sky above the martial soul city immediately dyed with a touch of light gold, and a golden pillar of light descending from the sky enveloped Xia Yuxi. "Grandpa, what's going on with Yushi's younger brother?" Xian Renxue was a bit worried. "Will such a big battle cause anything bad?" Xian Daolu smiled and shook his head, saying, "Don't worry, Xiaoxue. This child is also a divine martial soul. It seems that Grandpa's guess back then was still low. With such a posture, he may not be inferior to the 6-winged angel martial soul of our Qian family." Suddenly, Qian Daolu's pupils tightened, feeling the extremely familiar aura on Xia Yuxi's body. The beam of light converged, and a long bow emitting dazzling golden light condensed from Xia Yuxi's palm. Its appearance was 5 times similar to the martial soul of Guangling Doyuo, but there was no trace of ice element, but pure light, sacred. If this were in 10,000 years, people would call this kind of martial soul the ultimate light. At the same time, a golden shadow with 6 wings descended from above the martial soul city, spreading its arms in the air as if embracing the sun. Although the huge golden pillar of light disappeared, the phantom that flashed over the martial soul city was indeed engraved in the hearts of every resident of martial soul city who looked up. At this moment, Qian Daolu could no longer suppress the expression on his face. He clearly felt that Xia Yuxi's Bao martial soul level was 100% the same as that of the 6-winged angel, or even above it. And those who saw the illusion of angels in the martial soul city thought it was the manifestation of the angel God Lord. The patrol team and all the bishops knelt down, and under the divine light, everyone's hearts became incredibly calm and they couldn't help but kneel down. Farewell to the angel God. In the enshrined hall, Guangling Dolua carefully examined the martial soul in Xia Yuxi's hand and exclaimed in surprise, "Why is this Bao so similar to my martial soul? But in terms of quality, it definitely beats Guangling Longbo 3 streets away. It's not over yet." Ding! In Xia Yuxi's eyes, a purple-red light flickered slightly, and soon he lifted his right hand to the sky. Purple-red thunder roared from the sky towards the martial soul hall, accurately hitting his palm. The sacred aura around him converged in half, and a dark purple halo filled the void. An arc wrapped around the palm of the hand, amidst the dim glow, a dark purple halberd slowly condensed into shape. Xian Daolu was stunned by the twin martial souls. This child is the 3rd twin martial soul in 100 years. Ha, ha. What kind of demon did I pick up back then? Guangling Dolua laughed excitedly. His luck is even stronger than finding a soul bone over 50,000 years old from the treasury of the heavenly Dou Empire. Xia Yuxi grabbed the halberd, and her expression suddenly changed. The surging power of annihilation spread through her arms, and a thought of wanting to destroy everything inexplicably appeared in her mind. Aurora Holy Feather Bow. Eradicate the heavenly halberd. In Xia Yuxi's heart, the names of 2 great martial souls emerged. Xian Renxue was taken aback for a moment, thinking that she had hallucinated. Isn't Xia Yuxi silent? Has disappeared reasonably in chapter 68, may I ask why everyone doesn't like their voices? I left this just to enhance the emotional drama and promote the plot in a reasonable way, and the plot also mentioned that this is a side effect of the God of Destruction's fusion of self and angelic divine power, reshaping the protagonist's body and producing it for no reason. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Qian Yushi. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 9 Qianyu Shi. Come, child, extend your hand and test your innate soul power. Qian Dao Lu took out a crystal ball that was 2 circles larger than the one commonly used by deacons. Zaya Yuxi placed her hand on the crystal ball, and her soul power was immediately sucked away. The crystal ball emitted a dazzling blue light. Level 15. Innate soul power level 15. Qian Dao Lu looked at Xiao Yushi with fiery eyes. Old Wu had brought back this child, which was the most correct choice he had made in his life. There was no one left. This is truly the blessing of our ancestors. The martial soul hall will surely reign on the continent. Qian Renxue couldn't resist her curiosity and tentatively asked, Brother Yushi, what are the names of these 2 martial souls? Sister Shui, their names are Aurora Holy Feather Bow and Extinction Celestial Halberd. Zaya Yuxi fell back to the ground from mid-air, holding 1 bow and 1 halberd with a faint smile. Shile Calicolida. I am not a useless martial soul. With the ultimate light. And this, with a martial soul that surpasses the power of the mortal world, I can definitely protect Shui. Ah. What's in the west? Qian Renxue thought it was strange, but one thing can be confirmed. She didn't hear it wrong, it was Xiao Yushi's voice. Zaya Yuxi was slightly stunned, her smile froze for a moment, and her eyes were filled with surprise and excitement. I just spoke my heart out. It's impossible. That old man can't bring a knife to me and cut it now. Ah no, sister heard me wrong. It's the Aurora Holy Feather Bow and the Extinction Heavenly Halberd, right? Qian Renxue explained while observing Xiao Yushi's reaction. Zaya Yuxi nodded and breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. I was scared to death. I thought I accidentally laughed too much. Something is not right. There are 12 points out of 10. Qian Renxue is intelligent in ice and snow. Now is not the time to confirm these, let's first see what Grandpa says. Aurora Holy Feather Bow, Annihilation Celestial Halberd. It sounds very powerful. Guanling Dolua praised. Zaya Yuxi grinned and revealed a row of pure white teeth, saying, Thank you, Grandpa Guanling, for your praise. Qian Dao Lu looked at Xiao Yushi's brilliant smile and pondered deeply in his heart. Before he could speak up, Guanling Doluo spoke up 1 step ahead of him. Zaya Yuxi, are you willing to learn from me? Qian Daoliu's face turned pale as he coughed and said, Old Wu, I'm still here. Boss, I'm just too excited. Guanling Doluo chuckled and continued, Don't forget, Zaya Yuxi was picked up by me. In theory, I can be considered his life-saving benefactor. And as you can see, one of his martial souls is a bow, and it looks so similar to my Guanling long bow. I have to teach him anyway, right? You. Qian Dao Lu didn't realize for a moment that something was wrong there. He actually didn't want to give it to Guanling Doluo. Everyone taught it the same way, just for a personal pass-on. Kuyushi, this child is also a martial soul of the light department. It's just that, let him make his own decision. The eyes of the 2 senior colleagues were both on Zaya Yuxi, looking expectant. This made Zaya Yuxi very embarrassed, and Qian Renxue beside her was even more embarrassed. She glared at her 2 grandfathers with dissatisfaction. Isn't this embarrassing Yushi's younger brother? Sorry, Mr. Qian. Grandpa Guanling is right. He has saved my life, but the Martial Soul Hall also has nurtured me. I hope you don't mind. Zaya Yuxi touched her head and finally made a decision. I want to learn from Grandpa Guanling. Qian Renxue listened to his voice and felt that this younger brother really felt like a little adult, and when Guanling Dolua heard that Zaya Yuxi was determined to worship him as his teacher, he was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. He immediately agreed, and then his face turned slightly positive, putting on the airs of a master with his hands on his back. Teacher, please accept the student's bow. Zaya Yuxi took a step back to distance herself, and then bowed respectfully to Guanling. All right. All right. All right. This student, the old man, is so satisfied. Guanling nodded in satisfaction and then helped up Zayuxi. Congratulations, brother Yushi, Grandpa Guanling won't treat you unfairly. Qian Rangshu was also happy for Zayuxi, showing a sweet smile. Her good brother really shook off the world's 9 adults and 10 streets as soon as he awakened his martial soul. Now, he won't be sent to those places where the dead are trained. Zayuxi shyly scratched her head, revealing a naive smile. Huh, Schwer, don't worry, I will definitely work hard to cultivate. Let me protect you then. It was his voice again, and the little angel's cheeks blushed slightly, but there was still a hint of dissatisfaction in her heart. This stinky little brother, what do you think all day long? Don't think that twin martial souls are amazing. Sister, I am born at level 20. Humph, after you obtain the first soul ring, you must find a chance to beat you up and vent your anger. Qian Daolu silently watched as Xiao Yushi finished her apprenticeship ceremony and then glanced at the smiling face of her obedient granddaughter, lost in thought. This son has twin martial souls, born at level 15, and has a divine aura accompanying him. I have decided. From then on, he became Xiao Xue's half-brother. Having made up his mind, he spoke up and called out, Yushi. Ah! Zayuxi heard the sound of Qiandao Lu and quickly responded. Qiandao Lu touched his white beard and said earnestly, I remember, your little boy has always been considered the little snow siblings in private. This. Zayuxi smiled awkwardly and politely. Don't worry, Master Qian. Let's settle the accounts after autumn. At most, Schwer and I are just flying in the sky with her carrying me on our backs. Do you even have to worry about this? Qian Rangshu quickly hugged her grandfather's arm and coquettishly said, Grandpa, it's nothing. Yushi's younger brother is just playing with me. Qian Daoliu's mouth twitched and waved his hand, saying, You misunderstood my meaning. Since Zayuxi, you have the holy light martial soul of the angel clan, which can be said to be of the same origin as mine, and Xiao Xue really likes your younger brother. Big offering, you can just say the key point, said Zayuxi helplessly. Okay, since you were young, you have no surname, only a 2-character name. I want to recognize you as my godson. Would you be willing to follow the 1000 surname from now on? Surname Qian. Qian Yushi. Qian Renxue was slightly taken aback, thinking that her grandfather would punish Yushi's younger brother. However, when this proposal was made, she was pleasantly surprised and looked at Xiao Yushi with a hopeful expression on her face. Ah! Zayuxi was also stunned, never expecting Qiandao Lu to make such a request. And the smile on Guanling Doluo's face also stiffened for a moment, and his heart secretly slandered 1,000 streams of shamelessness. Unable to become an apprentice, he directly accepted him as a godson. This operation really leaves him speechless. At the same time, outside the martial soul city, a team of people and horses returned defeated at this moment. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Ambush her one hand. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Ambush her one hand. Zayuxi remained silent for a while before finally taking a deep breath and nodding solemnly. Well, I'm willing, Qianyuxi has met Grandpa. Upon hearing Xiao Yushi's affirmative response, Qian Daolu felt very good and was relieved of his disciple's displeasure when he was snatched by Guanling Doluo. He laughed heartily and said, Okay, okay. Xiao Xue, you don't have to be taboo in front of me from now on, ha. Qian Rangshu's face was a bit embarrassed, but more of a surprise, while Guanling Doluo was very depressed, but dared not refute a word. Great offering. Great offering. At this moment, an urgent call came from outside the hall. The 4 of them looked for the sound and saw a pale blue figure stepping on a blue giant bird and flying anxiously in front of it. Qinghuan. Guanling Doluo looked at the visitor with some confusion. The martial soul hall was worshipped 3 times, with a peak Doluo of 97 levels and the title Qinghuan. Shoo. Xian Daolu looked at him and frowned, saying, Qinghuan, did something big happen when you came so urgently? The great offering, both the Pope and the chrysanthemum ghost have been seriously injured and have just returned. What? The three of them were really shocked, and Qianyuxi also learned to shout. Coming, I must remind the Iron Pope to be careful of his crazy disciple. Be careful. Mom. Qian Renxue heard his voice clearly and suddenly turned back to look at Qian Yushi, with a hint of doubt in her eyes. Brother Yushi. Ah. What's wrong, sister? Qianyuxi looked up in confusion. Sister, why are you so calm? Your iron father is quick. Let's go and see Dad. Qian Renxue grabbed Qian Yushi, his martial soul possessed, and flew towards the Pope's palace. In no time, at the entrance of the ward, Snake Spear Dolua and Thorny Blood Dolua were standing guard. Seeing the arrival of 5 people, they quickly knelt down to welcome them. Speaking of the key points, what is the situation with the disease search? Xian Daolu didn't want to talk nonsense. Returning to the grand offering, the Pope's condition under the crown has temporarily stabilized, but it will take at least a year for him to fully recover. Okay, thank you for your hard work. Upon hearing these words, Qian Renxue pushed open the door and rushed in. He saw Qian Xuanji lying on the hospital bed, his eyes tightly closed, 2 or 3 bloodstains lying on his forehead, and his chest sunken by a few centimeters. 3 healing soul masters of soul Dolua cultivation were constantly releasing their soul skills beside him. Chrysanthemum and Ghost sat cross-legged on the bed, their soul power recovering from their injuries, and each was accompanied by a healing soul master named Soul Saint. Dad, Xuer is here. Open your eyes and take a look at Xuer. Qian Renxue cried, grabbing her father's hand and shouting. Upon hearing his daughter's voice, Chen Xuan woke up and comforted Xiaoxue. Dad is fine, isn't he just seriously injured? He can rest for a year. Qiang Sunji struggled to lift his hand and touched Qian Renxue's small head. Xiaoxue, don't disturb Dad's recovery for now, let him take a break. But Qian Renxue still lay on Chen Xuanji's body and didn't want to leave. Dad, Xuer doesn't want to leave. Xuer wants to be here with you. Seeing this, Qian Daolu also comforted his granddaughter and said, Xiaoxue, your father needs to rest and be good. Let's go out with Yushi's younger brother first. Yushi, take your sister back first and let her take it easy. Well, okay, Grandpa. Qian Yushi had no choice but to pull Qian Renxue out, and before leaving, she pulled Qian Daolu's shoulder and gestured for him to squat down. Be careful of the disciple of the Pope, whispered the 7 words in Qian Daolu's ear. Qian Daolu smelled a hint of danger, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he nodded. Qiang Sunji saw this scene and heard his father address the little guy. His lips twitched and he said, Father, shouldn't you? Well, Xuanji, you don't know how rebellious Yushi is as a child. In the ward, the father and son were talking about Qianyuxi. When they heard that Guanling had taken in his disciple and Qian Daoliu recognized his grandson, Qiang Sunji also looked amazed. Okay, Xiaoxue has been lonely and without friends for 9 years. Having a younger brother to accompany her when she grew up is not a bad thing, especially since this child is indeed qualified to stay in the Martial Soul Hall. Xian Daolu nodded and continued, by the way, before Xiaoyuxi left just now, let me tell you something. What's going on? Be careful of your disciple. The Temple of the Virgin. Upon hearing the news from the guards, Bibi Dong burst out laughing recklessly and said, Jie. Chen Xuanji, you also have today. It has been 9 years. Do you know how I have lived these 9 years? If it weren't for you, I probably would have lived a happy and joyful life with Xiaogan a long time ago. It was you who separated me and Xiaogan with your own hands. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for revenge. Speaking of which, I would have thanked Tang Hao well. If it weren't for him, I might not have had the chance to seek revenge yet. The first test of the Rakshasa divine examination is to kill a member of the angel clan. And devour his soul. This is her biggest secret since returning from the capital of slaughter 6 years ago. No one knows that she obtained the inheritance of the Rakshasa god in the capital of slaughter. By completing 9 divine assessments, she can become a god at 100 levels and become an invincible deity in the world. Qianshuan disease, Qianshuan disease. It seems that even the gods want you to die. Let me give you all my filial piety well. At this moment, Qianyuxi had just pulled Qian Rengshu out of the hospital room, while Snake Spear Dolua and Stinger Dolua were still guarding the door. My eyes rolled, and Qianyuxi shouted, 2 seniors. Snake Spear Dolua lowered his head and looked at the young master and the little guy, calmly saying, "Little doll, what's up?" "Senior, if the disciple under the Pope's crown comes later, please remember not to let her approach the Pope." Snake Spear Dolua was taken aback and instinctively said, "Why? Why? She's planning to kill your Pope. Why are you still asking me?" "Mom wants to kill Dad." Qian Renshue seemed to have heard something terrifying, and her face instantly changed. Seeing that the young master's face was not right, Tsigu Dolua quickly asked, "Young master, are you feeling unwell?" "Don't worry, with our guards, there won't be anything wrong under the Pope's crown." Qian Renshue shook her head and quietly glanced at Qian Yushi beside her. She bit her silver teeth and said, "Listen to him, don't let anyone except my grandfather and me get close to my dad. If Dad says don't disturb me, you should also guard in secret." "Yes." Although the young master is small, they are loyal to the Martial Soul Hall and the Angel Clan, not to mention that this request is not inappropriate. It must be Schwer's intelligence to ambush her. This guarantee will ruin Bibidong's previous efforts. I really don't understand. This boss is seriously injured and doesn't have a Dolua guardian. Is it that Iron Pope who is confident that no one dares, or are others confident that no one dares? It's outrageous. I have reminded you repeatedly this time. If you two can't keep that big grudge, why don't you just resign from the Martial Soul Hall? I have to find a reason to go out with my master. I really can't take it with me. End of this chapter.